Why, hello, everybody, and welcome back to Fandom Power. It's me, it's Wes, and it's these guys. It's Andy and Hank.
Yo,
What's
And
going on?
we are back with our next installment in our Fandom of the Jedi review series. A little bit late, I know, but it got kind of hard to dig in on this while we were heads down in Andor. So here we are now. We've done things out of order. If you've been following the series so far, you know that we have completed the Fall of Dooku arc. And so now it is time to turn our attention to everybody's favorite Togruta Jedi, Ahsoka Tano. I'm going to lead off this week with the first part, and that is life and death. However, before we can get to talking about life and death, we have to talk about
Bad Star Wars jokes.
Nice. This week's bad Star Wars joke comes from the internet because that's where they all come from.
It's a good friend of mine.
Guys, what do you call a droid pirate?
What do you call a droid pirate?
R2D2.
Nice. Whoa.
It's so bad. It's
Walk
so
the plank. That's excellent.
All right. As always, if you have a bad Star Wars joke or a dad Star Wars joke, we want to hear them. Send them over to us in the comments, or you can shoot us up at shoot us. No, don't be shooting anything at us.
No,
but
do
hit us up in our social media, or you can email the show at fandompower3@gmail.com with your bad Star Wars jokes. All right. Life and death. Quite literally, we get to witness or we are privy to on sort of the outside looking in, the birth of Ahsoka Tano. This one's actually, it's not one of the longest. I mean, it's advertised as a long one, but once you get into it, it's actually not that bad. What did you guys think of life and death?
Rapidly becoming my favorite Star Wars character. I think the season 7 Clone Wars addendum cinched it. Like, I mean, top 3 for sure. I mean, Obi's always in my heart. So well written, such a well-rounded character. What an arc. Like, and to see her literal beginning is just something I didn't know I needed.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that.
Dave Filoni has my heart in his hand, like Mola Ram.
I did not think I needed this character's origin that far. It's something that we've not really, besides Anakin Skywalker, we've never seen anybody taken from their family by the Jedi Order. I mean, we don't see that in this episode, but to see her identified by a village elder as Jedi or Force sensitive,
to see those, like the Togruta traditions, and stuff that they have to go through is like, okay. Great to learn. Loved it.
I have one nitpick about this episode. I'm going to throw it out here right off the bat. And it really kind of centers around the idea that Disney Star Wars, well, let's just start in Star Wars in general, at least with the films. The films have always introduced us to new applications of the Force. So there's nothing earth-shattering here. But to segue into that, Disney has gone out and made a point of having certain characters be particularly known for a particular Force ability. And so right off the bat, I'm a little bit disappointed that everything that they poured into Ezra Bridger's connection to animals is not special anymore.
No, Cal Kestis has it too.
Yeah, I suppose on some level he does, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So would Rey from the sequel trilogy, right?
She tamed the savage beast.
Yes. Right. If we get into Legends, Luke tames giant Rancor.
Well, there is that. Well, maybe it's me. So maybe I'm the odd one out. I just feel like that Rebels spent so much time and effort to depict this way that Ezra, interacts with animals, and they commented, in his case, like it's a big deal.
Maybe it's just the degree to which he took it.
Maybe.
See, I was thinking back in the Dooku episodes that perhaps because Dooku rubs his hand over that scar in the tree, I was thinking, does he have the Cal Kestis ability, the same one that Quinlan Voss has?
Oh, I don't know.
And you start to think maybe it's just like specialization. Maybe it's not like tuned to the Force, but like you studied that class more, or you were more interested in that particular subject.
That's not impossible.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else got anything they want to say before we get into it, or I'm just the only? I'm the only complainer. It's just me. Okay.
That's not that big a complaint. Not really.
It's just pointing something out.
All right. This one is Life and Death. It is written by Dave Filoni, and this one is directed by Nathaniel Villanova. By the way, if you go looking for photos of Daniel Villanova, it is like there are very few and far between. This one comes from his LinkedIn page.
Nice.
It is the only photo of him I could find. So I have no clue if this is even current or not. Now we're familiar with him from his work in Star Wars previously, but primarily his work has been as a storyboard artist, having done 23 episodes of Star Wars Rebels, but also directed 6 episodes of The Bad Batch, as well as 4 episodes of The Clone Wars. And this, I believe, is his only episode of Tales of the Jedi that he's directing. So Life and Death has an advertised runtime of 19 minutes, just a flat 19 minutes, but it actually works out to be an actual 15 minutes and 41 seconds without your titles and credits. Although titles, they kind of get you on that one because they've thrown them in sort of prologue, title, keep going. So, all right. In our synopsis this week, it reads, a child goes through a rite of passage with unexpected results. Yep, that's about it too. All right, our episode opens with the camera pointed at the night sky over a small village on the planet Sheely. Well, the night air is filled with the chirping of insects, and as the camera pans downward, we can see a village comprised of simple round wooden buildings nestled in a mountain forest with hanging lanterns lighting the street. Suddenly, a baby cries out, and a male Togruta rushes into the street. The man cannot contain his elation as he cries out in the native Togruti language, Yakamiso! Yakamiso! Before switching to basic and shouting, she's here! Yeah. Then the other villagers fill the street, their faces lit with joy as they share in the new father's excitement. The man shakes a few hands and claps a few shoulders before beckoning the villagers to follow him, and he rushes off to meet his new family member, pausing to bow at one of the village elders along the way. Okay, our Togrutan male here, this is Nakil. This is Ahsoka Tano's father. And he is played by, now, I do not want to butcher this gentleman's name, so please forgive me if I do not pronounce it correctly. I will do my best. This is Sunil Malhotra, who has 91 acting credits. Most of those are voice work. Recently played Gilmore for 3 episodes in The Legend of Vox Machina, but you may recognize him as Kung Lao from Mortal Kombat 11. Finish him. Fatality. Our village elder, now this character is Gantika, and she is played by, oh boy, this is another one. Okay. Tox Olagundoye.
Nice.
Who has 77 acting. Did I do okay on that?
I
think so.
Tox Olagundoye. I think that's how you pronounce her name. And I am so sorry if it's not. I don't mean to do that.
Of course not.
77 acting credits. They're an even mix of face work and voice work. However, most recently, she showed up in Star Trek Lower Decks as Captain Amina Ramsey for a couple of episodes. She also played in the Netflix Castlevania, where she played Zamfir for 10 episodes.
That is the rare Star Wars Star Trek crossover,
isn't it? Though,
yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Sheely here for a second. This, just like in Legends, remains the home planet of the Togruta species. The world itself is located in the expansion region of Star Wars space. So if you have access to a map of Star Wars space, you can look that up. Or if you're here watching the video version, you can see it right in front of you now. The planet is predominantly a mix of grasslands and coniferous forests, and its first appearance was in a flashback sequence in 2012 during the 5th season episode of the Clone Wars, The Gathering. That's the episode where Ahsoka escorts the Jedi younglings to Ilum. So kind of cool that we're, our first episode with Ahsoka, we get that connection there as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the Togruta species themselves, I figured this is a good time to talk about them because we're not going to have much of an opportunity elsewhere. The Togruta species first appeared in Attack of the Clones back in 2002. Now that's Jedi Master Shaak Ti, who we only see just a couple of times in the movie, and then she's glaringly absent from the remainder of the trilogy. Now, she is a member of the Jedi High Council at this point, and she does ride in with the cavalry at the first battle of Geonosis. So presumably
she made it that far.
She did make it that far. However, this character more than anybody has like a litany of deaths, like 3 of them.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, between Legends lore and canon lore. And just you can't not talk about them because it's kind of like, oh my God, just make up your mind. So canonically met her death at the hands of the newly minted Darth Vader, who executed her while she was meditating in the Jedi Temple during the events of Order 66. This is a lesser known deleted scene from Revenge of the Sith. But later on in Clone Wars, in the 6th season, Yoda would have this vision, which would show him a bunch of the effects of Order 66. And we see Shaak Ti take a lightsaber through the chest. Although we don't see who that is that's driving it through her, it's inferred that the events that happened in that deleted scene are what happened.
Making them canon.
Yeah, exactly. So apparently in that version, she chose when the Order 66 happened, she chose to meditate. I think she was doing something about some kind of message or making some kind of holocron thing about like, don't forget, the order. Like she knew that it was ending, but she was trying to do her best to preserve the order for future generations.
Right. I joked offline that maybe Togruta have multiple lives like a cat, because I mean we've actually seen Ahsoka die twice. Well, we haven't seen her die twice, but
the cat analogy is pretty good. It's something we don't see very much in animation, but technically Togruta are a predator species,
right?
And they do have sharp teeth, like a predator.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, that's just one of her 3 deaths. In the second instance, it's a variation of that, also from Revenge of the Sith. This time, it would be at the beginning of the film when Anakin and Obi-Wan are trying to rescue the Supreme Chancellor. Mm-hmm. They come across General Grievous and a couple of his Magna Guards who have her essentially defeated. And after they do basically General Kenobi, and they have that's kind of interplay with him. He basically executes her in front of them. By the way, in a weird roundabout kind of way, that death segues kind of nicely with the way that she interacted with Grievous in the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars, because she's the one that in that Clone Wars series, she's the one that actually took the Chancellor. Come on, Chancellor, we got to go. When they attacked Coruscant to try to capture him. So it's an interesting how they, that idea wasn't completely dead, or that the Tartakovsky series wasn't completely not thought of when they did Revenge of the Sith. Mm-hmm. And finally, her 3rd death, which is the most departed from the other 2, is at the hands of Starkiller, Galen Marek, Darth Vader's secret apprentice during the events of The Force Unleashed. And she's a much different look. No other way to say it. She's really overtly sexified in this in the game, where she's hardly wearing anything. But the idea is that in this, she survived Order 66, and she's now relocated to Felucia. That's the planet where Twi'lek Jedi Knight. Oh my lord, what's her name? She's getting an action figure release here shortly.
Luminary Unduli?
No, the blue Twilight girl.
Alia Sakura.
So yes, so where Alia Sakura was killed, that's the same planet, and she's gone there and basically taught a bunch of the locals some of the ways of the Force. And Starkiller catches up with her, and the rest is lightning and a throw myself into the pit. So yeah. Cool thing about Togruta, brightly colored humanoids known for long head tails, also known as Laku. Of course, Laku are not new to us. We've seen them on other species in Star Wars before, like the Twi'leks. But unlike the Twi'leks, the Togruta actually have 3 Laku. They have the 2 off the side, and they have a central one that hangs down the back. But they also have a pair of horn-like structures. Now, these are called montrals. And a Togruta's montrals are actually an extrasensory organ that give them a sort of passive echolocation sense, which is an evolutionary trait stemming from the fact that, as I said before, Togruta are a predator species. However, as we see in this, they are also a prey species, which is why sometimes we see them depicted with sharp teeth. Another evolutionary trait is that Togruta's skin pigmentation, which varies from several shades of yellow through orange and red, and in this episode we actually see purple, is actually a natural camouflage to help them blend in with the grasslands of Sheely. So another evolutionary trait. And contrary to what you might think, a Togruta's white markings are not tattoos. They are actual skin pigmentation that occurs naturally.
Neat.
So I think it's kind of cool. So there you go. That's the Togruta species in a nutshell.
So technically, though, after watching Kenobi,
you
can get run through with a lightsaber and live.
Twice.
That's right.
There it is.
Twice you can do it.
So maybe it's all 3 deaths are the same.
Well, I didn't dig too far on the rabbit hole, but I mean, one of our characters actually shares, and I don't know how the Togruta naming convention works. Sometimes their names are hyphenated, sometimes they're not. They tend to be multisyllabic. One of the characters in this episode is a T, and it's the same spelling as Shakti, but I don't know. It's nice. Ahsoka's mother, actually, Pavti. We're going to get to that. All right. So outside the hut, the villagers gather, eager to meet the new baby. While inside, a woman hands a baby wrapped in a blanket over to its mother. Cradling the baby, the mother gazes lovingly down at it. Then the villagers part at the doorway and Gantika enters the building. The new mother looks up at her, and Gantika walks purposefully towards the mother and child. With a respectful nod, the mother turns the baby over and presents the child to the elder, and with a smile announces the baby's name, Ashoka. And then we fade to black. Now, Pavti, that's Ahsoka's mother. This is actress Janina Gavankar. Now, fans of Star Wars Battlefront 2, you will know her or recognize her as Iden Versio. You may also recognize her from a series called The Mysteries of Laura, where she played the character of Meredith for 38 episodes. And all the way back to the early HBO days. I guess it's HBO, isn't it? True Blood? Yeah, I think that was HBO. Like she played Luna Garza for 25 episodes on True Blood. We get our title cards. It's the same titles that we've seen throughout the series. This one, of course, is called Life and Death. And then the camera fades into a daylight overhead shot looking down on the mountain village. Nakil and a droid are working to replace some of the wooden roof tiles as the rest of the village goes about their daily business. Well, then the door to the hut opens and both Pavti and Ahsoka, now riding in her mother's baby Bjorn, step out into the sunlight. Nakil looks down from his ladder and he asks, "Are you sure she's ready?" And Pavti says, "It's custom." And the male Togruta fires back, "In old days," adding, "Old ways for the old. Not you, Pavti, not yet." But Pavti admonishes him, telling Nakil not to make fun or he'll insult the spirits.
"You'll insult the spirits."
And Nakil retorts, "The trees?"
The trees.
But Pavti gently and yet firmly corrects him with, "No, ancestors." And Nakil concedes and he says that he meant no offense. Well, then, reaching back inside the hut, Pavti gathers a rifle and closes the door. Nakil wishes them good hunting, and he watches as mother and daughter leave on their first hunting trip together. That droid, by the way, looks an awful lot like the lifter droids that we saw back in Justice in the Dooku episode, but the legs are considerably much shorter. And we're going to see that one again. I think it's actually in it's in your episode, Andy.
I believe so.
Yeah. Interesting that model got used quite a bit throughout this series. And they just have this thing for this. The astromech head thing is becoming a through line in Star Wars as of late. Well, Pavti and Ahsoka make their way up the street, and passing Gantika's hut, the village elder sits there feeding what looks like, now this is what I'm calling them, it looks like raccoons that have been drawn through the lens of a loth cat. The old woman stops at the hunters, and she asks, "Off on the hunt? Has it been more than a year already?" And when Pavti tells her it has, the old woman gets up and approaches them. Reaching into a pouch on her belt, she dips her thumb in some blue pigment and then says, "For luck." She then proceeds to anoint both girls with the pigment on their foreheads as she recites, "Tu amai, tu amai." Pavti thanks the elder, and she and Ahsoka walk off into the dense pine forest surrounding the mountain village. I did like all the traditional stuff here, like all the ritual ancestral stuff here. Like, even if I didn't like fully understand it, I appreciated that. Oh, okay.
We get a little window into their culture.
Yeah, a little cultural.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, later that day, Pavti and Ahsoka walk down a dimly lit mountain trail. The pine forest is thick and tall, blocking out much of the daylight. A squirrel bounds from tree to tree above them, and baby Ahsoka watches it inquisitively. As they walk, the sounds of the forest fill their ears, and Pavti cradles her baby's chin as she says,
Look, Ashoka. Everywhere there is life.
Gesturing widely at everything around them, she says, "Value it, honor it." And Ahsoka babbles back at her, clearly content with riding with her mother out in the woods. And pulling up beside some large purple spores with what appear to be giant dandelion heads on them, Pavti begins tapping them with her rifle, and the spores throw their seeds into the air, and Ahsoka giggles and shakes her head back and forth at the sight. But then Pavti is alerted to something, and she beckons Ahsoka to be quiet, laying 2 fingers over her mouth to silence the laughter. Off in a distant clearing, an animal brays, and Pavti points at it. Then she crouches low and begins stalking towards the creature. Creeping closer to the clearing, we can see that it's 4 Kaibuck grazing in the tall grass. 2 of them lift their horned deer-like heads and survey for danger. And Pavti takes up her rifle and looks down the scope, focusing on one of them. In the clearing, 3 of the 4 Kaibuck continue grazing, while the 4th one remains on alert. Then a shot rings out, and the animals bolt into the woodline. Back in the village, Gantika, still sitting with her loth raccoons, hear the rifle blast. So, closing her eyes, she touches her forehead, her mouth, and her heart as she chants, Kosha, Vita, Umta. So talk about Kaibuck here for a second. I actually quite like this. This is another throwback to the Tartakovsky Clone Wars. The Kaibuck is a large 2-legged ungulate, made its first appearance back in Chapter 1 of the Tartakovsky Clone Wars on November 3rd, 2003. In Legends lore, this animal was actually native to Kashyyyk. So presumably now, because this is their first canonical appearance on screen, now they're native to Sheely, I guess. I like them, and I said, a tauntaun is to goats and kangaroos as Kaibucks are to deer and kangaroos.
Yeah.
It's in my head they're the same. They're related anyway. They're just the warm weather tauntaun.
It's wicked.
Yeah, and Yoda rides one into battle. So yeah, and of course it's the one that got an action figure release.
Perhaps a connection to animals.
Whatever do you speak of?
Connection.
Well, Pavti and Ahsoka enter the clearing, and looking down, we can see one of the Kaibuck there laying there wounded. Pavti kneels down beside it, and Ahsoka begins to fuss, but her mother turns the baby's head toward her and says, "You must face death, Ahsoka. Do not fear it. Now settled, Ahsoka watches the Kaibuck as it lays there gasping for breath, while Pavti takes out a knife. Placing a hand on the animal, she speaks the same ritual chant that Gantika just spoke in the village, Kosha, Vita, Omta. And then, placing both hands on the handle of the knife, she closes her eyes and drives the blade into the Kaibuck's rib cage, releasing it from its mortal coil. At the same time, back in the village, Gantika, still with her hand on her heart, looks up for a moment. I really feel like they're hinting at us that Gantika, at the very least, is force sensitive to some degree. There's more going on there than just the whatever their extrasensory organs will allow them to note. In the clearing, Pavti binds the animal's hind legs, preparing it to travel back to the village, while little Ahsoka sits in the grass and watches. Pavti calls the Kaibuck a heavy one, noting how it will feed many people. Facing her daughter, she then asks, "Think we can lift it?" Ahsoka giggles and claps her hands in excitement, and Pavti tells her, "We never take more than we need." Unbeknownst to both of them, another predator has found the clearing and lays in wait. Standing up, Pavti wipes her brow as she says, "I shall carry you and the Kaibuck, unless you would like to carry him." Ahsoka reaches up for her mother, but is suddenly distracted by something and looks past her. Pavti turns to look and is surprised to see that a large, striped, green, saber-toothed cat is stalking towards them. Pavti calmly reaches for her rifle as the cat closes in, but it's just out of reach. With just a few feet separating them, the cat roars as it draws closer. And then Pavti suddenly stands up with her arms outstretched to make herself look as large as she possibly can. She roars back at the cat in an attempt to scare it off. And for a brief moment, the cat actually recoils, which is just enough for her to be able to grab her rifle. But the cat is just that much quicker, and it launches an attack. Swatting at Pavti with its deadly claws, it's all that Pavti can do to avoid the attack, and she makes a diving roll to get out of the cat's reach. But the predator is fast, and it turns to pounce on her. Fortunately, she's able to get her rifle up to block it, and the cat bites down on the rifle. Then the cat thrashes its head, tossing Pavti several feet away. Now, flat on her back, both she and the cat are alerted to the fact that there is still a baby present when they hear Ahsoka babbling away, sitting beside the dead Kaibuck. With a look of fear, Pavti turns her attention back to the saber-toothed cat, and as the cat lunges toward her daughter, she takes up the rifle and unloads several rounds at it. The saber-toothed cat, this is a new species here. It's I could not find a reference for this particular species of cat.
No.
But there is no denying the resemblance to a certain striped tiger that we may have seen in other media. And I couldn't help but make the analogy that this thing is essentially a battle cat.
By the power of Grayskull.
Yeah, by the power of Sheely. It's got it's undeniable, especially the 2002 iteration of Battle Cat, also being a saber-toothed cat. It's remarkable how somebody's a He-Man fan, and that's okay.
Way to go, art department.
That is, yeah. All right. Well, in the village, Gantika hears the rifle blasts, and she gets up from her seat, shooing the Loth raccoons away. But she's not the only one alerted, as Nakil stops roofing the hut, and he looks to the forest as he speaks Pavti's name.
Pavti.
In the clearing, Pavti fights for her life as the saber-toothed cat rends the rifle from her hands. Drawing her knife, she slashes fiercely at the beast, and she manages to land a few blows as she goes. Meanwhile, back in the village, Gantika watches as villagers armed with rifles rush into the forest to find Pavti. While back in the clearing, Pavti backs toward Ahsoka, who's still quite jubilant despite the fact that a large predatory animal is trying to kill her mother. Finally, the big cat rears up on its hind legs, and it butts Pavti aside like a rag doll before turning back to take the baby in its mouth. But then the villagers arrive and open fire, hoping to either kill it or drive it off. Now, the cat, who is clearly wounded from several of Pavti's knife slashes, circles around Ahsoka, then picks her up and runs off into the forest. Unarmed and unable to stop the cat, Pavti cries out and reaches for her baby, But then the villagers are there holding her back and consoling her as she hangs her head and cries. Oh, I can't imagine what that would feel like to...
Terrible.
Like the joke of...
The helplessness.
Well, yeah. A dingo ate my baby.
Mm.
A battle cat ate my baby. Yeah, I couldn't imagine.
Danger.
But then again, at the same time, like evolutionary speaking, like knowing that they're both, you know, a predator and a prey species, like this has to have happened over the course of the evolutionary course of their species.
Yeah.
That sometimes you lose some, you know. She's upset, but she doesn't seem that upset by the time we get to the end of the episode. All right. As the sun goes down, Gantika walks to the edge of the forest. Grasping a stone that she wears around her neck, she offers a prayer in Togruti. Vish, Gosh, Fuitim ai. At the same time, the saber-toothed cat lopes through the forest with baby Ahsoka still in its mouth. And Ahsoka, still babbling away like a happy baby, looks back seemingly unfazed by the situation that she now finds herself in. Finally, the cat returns to its lair, and it descends into a dark depression under a thick copse of trees. The cat drops Ahsoka in the center of the depression, then circles around her till it finally lays down. Now facing both her and the entrance, the cat growls menacingly at Ahsoka before it turns its attention to its wounds and begins to lick them. Ahsoka then sneezes, of all things, and the cat perks up at her, unleashing a ferocious roar. But Ahsoka doesn't seem bothered by it in the slightest. In fact, she pulls herself up onto her feet to face the creature. The cat, now salivating profusely, gets back to its feet and slowly begins to creep towards the little girl. And Ahsoka just stares at it, following its gaze with her own wide blue eyes. Now, face to face with each other, Ahsoka reaches out with her little hand and touches the big cat's nose. And suddenly, the ferocity is gone, and the cat sits down in front of her and continues staring. Well, not completely absent of its predatory nature. The cat does roar again, but Ahsoka has no reaction to it whatsoever, and she just stares at it, unblinking. That night, the villagers gather around Nakil and Pavti at the center of town. Everyone is on high alert, and many of them are still armed. Gantika is there holding Pavti's arm in support. Then a scout rushes to them to say that there is no sign of Ahsoka or the saber-toothed cat. Turning to face the armed villagers, Nakil declares that they will go out in force and they won't stop until they find her. Suddenly, the roar of the saber-toothed cat rings out very close to the village, and Pavti pushes past the men to see what's going on. Out of the darkness come two glowing yellow eyes. It's the saber-toothed cat, and it roars again. The villagers all raise their rifles, but Gantika raises her hand and beckons them, "Wait!" And to everyone's shock and dismay, the cat lumbers into the lantern-lit street with baby Ahsoka riding on its shoulders. Stopping just a few feet from the villagers, the beast lowers its head submissively, and Ahsoka, still babbling away, smiles as she reaches out for her mother. Pavti steps cautiously to the side of the cat to collect her daughter, and the two share a warm and heartfelt reunion. Well, then the cat raises itself up to its full height and stares down regally at Pavti as she offers some words of thanks into Togruti as she bows her head. Rakshir, Due Maya, Due Mai. The cat looks down at Ahsoka before turning back and walking back into the forest. Nakil drops his rifle and rushes to be with Pavti and Ahsoka. Confused, Pavti looks to Gantika and asks, "How can this be?" And Gantika knows the answer. Looking at the child and her parent, she says, "Jedi."
Ahsoka is Jedi.
Pavti and Nakil share a confused look, and then we fade to black.
Wow.
The pacing on this episode, it's tight and it's fast.
Yeah.
And it moves. It's over before you realize it.
Oh, yeah.
No wasted motion.
No, not at all. So, I mean, there you go. Baby Ahsoka, force sensitive right from the get-go. And the village elder, with her ability to identify that, you know, I mean, she's force sensitive herself, as I've already suggested that she is, or two, she's just seen it before.
Super knowledgeable.
Yeah. Little A, little B.
I think so.
What'd you guys think of that episode?
I liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked. The Dooku episodes were insightful in terms of giving me a few things. Like they confirmed a few things that we knew to be true, but never really had that official stamp on.
Yeah,
and this is in the vein of that, but completely new. It's not giving me something like I mean, okay, we took her birth for granted, sure, I guess, right? We take everyone's birth for granted.
Of course,
but, just like knowing how powerful she is, and knowing maybe her biggest trait is her fearlessness, and you could call this episode fearlessness.
You could
fear, she's very pure here.
It's that whole notion of like, wild animals that aren't afraid of people because they don't know enough to be afraid. Like it's the first encounter.
Right.
What's that? Oh, I don't know what that is. Is it smaller than me? Okay, whatever. But in this case, I mean, Ahsoka, she's a baby.
Yeah.
That saber-toothed cat, I mean, is like battle cat size.
Could have ate her at any time.
Well, that's just it. And then the bigger question is, why didn't it? If you're hungry, or did you just want to enjoy the meal back home?
Well,
maybe it's because it's wounded from the knife.
Could be. Wanted to be within the confines of safety before snacking down.
That's entirely possible.
Because a lot of animals will drag their prey where they want to go, right?
I think there were bones in the layer too, right? Like
there was,
like the wampa.
I will say this: after we went through the Dooku arc, and I said, these little snippets of insight just make me want more. I want the in between stuff now that we're not getting. So, like, I want to see. I mean, who shows up to collect her from Sheely? Who takes her to the temple? I want to see all that.
Mm-hmm. Or does like Jessica actually, call up the Jedi and say, "Hey, we got one."
Well, that's an interesting thought. Like I don't think that's ever been really presented that way. That hey, here we are in this corner of the galaxy, and we believe we have. Please come and check for us.
Yeah.
I mean, what Qui-Gon says, if he'd been born in the Republic, he would have been identified at birth. So it's probably a thing, and
maybe
it probably shows itself. If you have 1 trillion beings and 10,000 Jedi, there's probably something incredibly special event that garners attention for every single one that gets picked and taken to the temple.
Yeah. Well, folks, that is the first episode of the 3-episode arc that follows Ahsoka Tano and Tales of the Jedi. It is life and death. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I really enjoyed kind of chewing down on this one and dissecting it apart. Really enjoyed revisiting the Togruta species. Absolutely one of my favorite species from Legends, especially from the RPG. The RPG suggested that their species had a high level of force sensitivity, so no surprise that Ahsoka has grown to become this fan favorite character, and just happens to be Togruta. Pav T, Shock T, is there a connection there? I don't know.
Could be familiar.
Maybe it is the same spelling, but
it's hyphenated, so maybe that's like there are.
I don't know.
Maybe it's like Carrie Ann or Jillian or
maybe yeah. I hear you. It could be something like
the word for that is, but yeah,
I don't know, but yeah. Well, stay with us because there's more to come here from the three of us here at Fandom Power as we continue our trip down Fandom of the Jedi. But until the next one, I guess that's it for me.
Yeah.
All right, guys, for Fandom Power, my name is Wes. We'll catch you on the next video.
I'm Andy.
I'm Hank.
Bye for now, guys.
Woohoo.
Hey, guys. Thanks for listening to Fandom Power. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll be talking about another one of your favorite fandoms. Fandom Power is a Sawcast production.
You can email the show at fandom. Try that again. You can email.